So we're going to Learning Suite. I got to sign in. One of these days I'm going to leave my phone in my office. I have to sign in. What are we going to do?
No class.
Class dismissed. Okay. So today we're doing Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is really a pretty lightweight day, but what we're trying to do here is just get comfortable with the idea of Visual Basic, with the Visual Basic Editor, and with writing code from scratch. So really, the main thrust so far has been, we've talked about objects, we've talked about properties and methods, we've used some of those, we've recorded macros, but now I want to think about, all right, so what do we have to do if we're going to start from scratch and write our own VBA code? And so to do that, I've got an example today that we're going to work with. So download the schedule.xlsm file, and that will be just some data for us to work with. This data is actually the schedule for the accounting program for fall of this year for all of their classes that are scheduled in the Tanner building. So if anyone here is taking accounting 403, oh, that's like the junior core, isn't it? Yeah. So that's what I need to do. Maybe you're in 530 or something. If you're in section 2, that really is where it's scheduled today. Not that that's important. So we'll let you get that data loaded. Sheet 2. You delete Sheet 2. You won't be using Sheet 2 today. So here's what I would like to do. Ultimately, by the end of this example today, I would like to come over here to these columns, starting here in column S, where we kind of have the days laid out, and I would just like to color in where this class actually extends to on the schedule. So we've got to look at this data, read the data, and then modify this worksheet. Just put some color in here to indicate this one. So what would we want this to be for this first one? So this starts at 12:30, ends at 1:45. I was trying to decide how to represent this to you, and I decided to leave this as 1:45, but then to give you the 13:45 over here to work with, so that we don't have so much math to do, or we're just trying to get used to programming in general. So these columns K through N are just takes these numbers that are written for humans to read, and they're just split out so they'll go a little bit easier for us to work with. So 12:30 to 1:45. That would be 12:30 to 1:45 right there. We put some color on it. Yellow is fine. Just so that some administrator of the accounting department could look at that and just kind of get a feeling, a visual look at where do all these classes fit in the schedule. Questions about the goal for today? Anyone still trying to get that file down, or are we ready to go? Okay, so let's go ahead and open the Visual Basic Editor, Alt F11. There's already a module in here, Module 1. It has a procedure in it called Make Schedule. Or make anyway, it's got a CHEUDLE. Schedule. All right. First thing I'd like to do is I just want to create the structure that we need to be able to work through the data. I know I have to process every single one of those lines. So what am I going to need to do that? What's the programming term for what I need for that? It's called a loop. And so we'll use the same loop that we've done before. Start with do, end with loop. If you hit F5 right now, or you run right now, you'll have to restart Excel to get out of it. Because it'll get into that loop and just never get out. So I'm always going to put a do events here at the end. Remember, the do events just tells the interpreter on each iteration through the loop, when it gets to this line, just to look and see if we're trying to interrupt it. do is I would like to just put code here that will print off everything that's in column 1. I just want to, oh, column 1 is the year. Why don't we do column F, which is the catalog number. So, any thoughts? What should I do? Just with the stuff that we've gone over in class, what could we do here? Okay, so a couple ways we could do. We'll do a print. So the way we do a print from the code up to the immediate window here is the object is debug. So we say debug, the method is print. And then we just put what we want to put here. So let's just do this, active cell. Active cell dot value. So now, before we get to the loop, we better start that in the place that we want to start it. So let's activate a particular cell. Now, so far the way we've seen to activate a cell is this. Range. What's the range we want? F2. F2 dot select. Now, if I set this to run, what is it going to print? Yeah, whatever's in F2, maybe 1,000,000 times. It depends on how soon I am able to interrupt it. So I need to do something here to tell it to select a different cell. So after I do what I'm trying to do with the loop, so how am I going to tell it to select a different cell? Offset. So active cell dot offset. Now it wants to know how many rows I want to offset. 1. How many columns do I want to offset? 0. That 0 is optional. If I leave the 0 off, it'll just offset 1 row. Now, what do I want to do with it? I want to that refers to the next cell down. I want to select it. So now we should start at F2, print off the active cell, select the next cell down, and we're doing pretty good, except we still don't have a way out of the loop, so we'll get out the same way we've done before until active cell's value is blank. Now we'll go ahead and run that, and it should put a bunch of numbers off that look like class numbers, 241, 310, 401, and 565R. Okay, so at this point, I feel pretty good about having a structure in place that will let me deal with each one of these rows individually. Now, I got to figure out which cells we're going to change to a different color. So, any thoughts on how we're going to do that? Kind of look over here. Look at this first row. I'm going to collapse some of these things we don't really need to see in here. And hide. While you're thinking about that, let me show you a different way. In fact, stop thinking about that for a moment and pay attention to me. A different way to select a particular cell. So far, the only way we've seen is through range. Here's another one. I can say cells. Range takes 1 argument. Well, it can take 2 arguments too, but the way we've seen it so far, it takes 1 argument where you give it an address for the cell. I can say cells and then refer to a particular cell. I want row number, so we say row number 2, column number, I don't know, 20. I'll just print the address here so we can see what I'm referring to. That's referring to D2. So the nice thing here is that I can put in any expression here that evaluates to a particular a number. What if I wanted to put in here? What if I wanted to use this to refer to the cell, a cell that's on the row where the active cell is? So right now, if you think about it, when I'm going through this, I'll have the active cell here on row number 6. And I'm going to need to refer to some cell over here to be able to set its color. The active cell is going to be wherever it was there, column 6 or something. So how can I refer to column 20 of the same row that has the active cell? Yeah. One of the properties of a cell is to be able to report what row it's on. And so I can ask for I did not mean to copy all that. Active cell dot row. So that's on 6 right now. Yeah, it's on 6. So I come to 10 and run that. Well, 10 is the active cell. The active cell's on row 10. Of course, there's also a column as well. But because that evaluates to the number of a row, a valid row number, I could say cells. What I had before there was like 2, 20? This, right now, evaluates to 10. This whole thing evaluates to 10. So I can take that and I can replace the 2 with it. So for this to be evaluated now, it has to say, okay, I'm trying to figure out, refer to a particular cell. And the interpreter comes along here and goes, cells, I got it, I know what you mean. I'm expecting 2 numbers. And it gets here and goes, holy cow, that's not a number. Oh, but what is it? Maybe I can figure that out. Whatever's there, let me figure out what it means. And it goes, oh, yeah, that is a number. After all, it's 10, based on the way the sheet's configured right now. And it gets to this, and it goes 20. I know that, and wants the address, and it should give us what? What address should that be? Let's see. The row is 10. Yeah, so it should be T10. So it's always a little confusing because the way we normally refer to cells is column first and then row. But always when we have a paired value to refer to a cell, it's always row and then column. Okay, so using this approach here, I now have 2 indices that I can do, any kind of math I want to be able to figure out what that is. So how do I figure out, looking at this first one, how do I look at this and realize it's got to start right here in AK? First of all, I'd like to know what column AK is. It's 37. So I've got to look at this row and say, this class has to start in column 37. Any thoughts on how to do it? Go ahead.
You're going to have to use the start hour.
Okay, so we've got this data right here. We have 12 and 30. Now each of these hours is broken up into 15-minute blocks. And it looks like all of our scheduling is in 15-minute blocks. That's convenient. And so the 12 should get us to this cell right here. Right? That's 12 plus 0 minutes. And so how are we going to get, so we actually want to get to this. We want to convert that 12 into, that's 37, 35, 37, 35. We've got to convert 12 into 35. And 13 into what? 39. Any thoughts on how we're going to do it? Yeah.
Could we, to get into the right hour, could we do the hour of the class minus 8 o'clock times 4, and that's how many you have to?
Hour of the class. Say it again.
Hour of the class minus 8 o'clock.
Okay, so hold on a second. Oh, because 8 o'clock's our smallest one,
yeah,
right?
That's where it all starts on your graph. Right?
Yes, we start here at 8 o'clock. Yeah, that's why it starts at 8 o'clock, because that's our earliest starting hour. So you're saying take 12 minus 8.
And then multiply that by 4. But then you're
12
also
minus 8 is 4.
But then you're going to have to add, like, basically all the way up through S to
S.
start the right place, to whatever that number is.
Let's give it a shot. So you're saying take 12, subtract 4, or subtract 8, plus,
Well, multiply that by
multiply this whole thing by 4, and then add on to it
however many columns you need to start right at 19.
You could just
try 19. So that is going to give us 35. Isn't that exactly what we needed? You were so fast at that. Okay. So I like it. Valid immediate pain, whatever it is valid. All right. So now, here's what I'd like to do. Instead of printing the active cell, I'll go ahead and put the active cell's value. But let me also now try to print the address of that cell that I'm trying to get. So I'll do another debug.print here. Cells. The row I want is the row of the active cell. So active cell.row. Some expression here to figure out the column I'm talking about. And I want to see the address. So that expression should be right here. I'm going to start off with this one that I hard-coded. And we're going to add in the parts that we need. So the 19 is the offset. That gets us starting in the right column. So that's a constant. The 4 is because our hours are 4 columns wide. But the 12 and the 8 we're going to have to read off of the sheet. Actually, no, the 8 is a constant as well. 12 is the only one we're after here. So this will get us to the 12. Oh, but we're going to have to do a little bit more. Before we bring this in, let's finish this off. The 12 gets us to the start arrow, but this one starts at 12:30. So how do I now account for the 30 to be able to get that to shift over there? Yep.
Add whatever's in L2, which is 30, and then divide that by 15.
Plus 30 divided by 15. So what we're really after to start for this one should be 37. And so that looks like just the right thing. And it's this 30 and this 12 are the ones I'll have to replace with references to the worksheet. So this is a little complex, but I think we can handle it. So this 12, I've got to refer to a particular column on the row with the active cell. So I need to get a value in here. So I'm going to just start off by saying cells, open and closing parenthesis, dot value. Put that right in the place where the 12 was. We're going to come and figure out what to put in the inside of that here in just a second. I'm going to do the same thing for my 30. Cells, dot value. Are we following this so far? Okay. Well, for the row on all of these, we're always dealing with the active row. So I'm going to go ahead and put an active row. Do that on both of them. Active cell.row, I mean. Now we just need to know the column that has the 12 and the column that has the 30. So 12 is in column K, that's column 11. Or as it turns out, this cells method, so I can put the 11 in there, but the cells method is also smart enough if you put in string a letter, it can figure that out as well. So a row number and a row letter has to be in quotes, or some variable that gives you a string that gives you back that character. And the other one is 2 over.
Does case matter?
Does case matter for identifying the column? The answer is no. That one over. That's a really long cell. How can I break this down? Where's a good place to break this? Cells, active cell.row. And this whole other thing is getting me to the column. I'm going to break this onto another row just so we can see it here. So I'm going to underscore here. And we're getting the address.
Should it be L instead of M? I think it should be the column.
Oh, you're right. M is the next is the closing of the class. This should be. I'll put it in capital. Lowercase l looks too much like a 1. And I don't think I really want to be printing the active cell anymore, so I'm going to get rid of that one. So this should just print off a bunch of addresses for where these times should start. So I'll run this code. Of course, the play button, when I'm here in design mode, the play button will run that code. It should start in AK2. So first thing I see is that my rows are looking pretty good. Row 2, 3, 4, whatever. So now we have AK. The next one's supposed to start in S. Just going to verify those two. It's already highlighted, and it does start in AK. The next one's supposed to start in S. That's 8 o'clock. Yeah, that's 8 o'clock. The next one's 11. That should be AE. AE. So it looks like we're pretty good. We will want to check it, once we run the whole thing out, we'll want to check it a little more deeply, but there we go. Okay. So what we just did here was a long, hideous thing. That's just part of what we do in VBA. I'm trying to refer to different specific parts of the worksheet depending on what's happening. This is a really normal thing to do. Questions on what we have so far? Is there anyone who's going, I couldn't quite get that to work? We have TA here for the rescue, so we'll pause here if there's more than one, and I'll come help as well.
Can you raise your hands again?
Go ahead and pause. So, what we have here highlighted is just the part that's identifying the column. This whole calculation is to figure out what column. The row we're reading off the active cell. And because this is getting so long, I would like to put this to make this a little bit more readable. We're going to use a thing called a variable. We're going to learn about variables in detail next time we get together. So Wednesday, that'll be a main topic that we cover. But for today, I just want to introduce it very simply. Here's how we set it up. You can think of, I'll give you the more details on Wednesday, but you can think of it right now as just like a bucket with a name on it. It's a named bucket. Here's how we make the bucket. Dim, and I'm going to call this, I'll call it C1. That's all I'm going to say, dim C1. That's a variable. And so now, right before I do this debug.print, I'm going to say C1 equals, and I'm going to copy everything right up to, but not including that last parenthesis, because the cells has an opening parenthesis here and a closing parenthesis here. So everything from the beginning of these parentheses here up to that closing parenthesis there, that's identifying the number of the column. I'm going to cut it from there and put in C1 there, and just have C1 do the calculation. So now C1 is just holding that number. This should now behave exactly the same way. The only difference is, instead of just putting that number directly into the reference for the cell, I'm saying put it in this bucket named C1, and then dump that bucket C1 right into here. Yep.
So we said DC1, did it default to a variant?
We'll talk about data types next time we get together. Chapter 5, I think, will answer that question for you in your spare time. Okay, so now what I'm getting here is this is going to give me the address of the cell for the start time. I'd like to also get the address for the cell of the end time. It's going to be a similar calculation. I'm going to make a variable for that one. I'll call it C2. C, by the way, is short for column. It's the first column number we need, and the second column number that we need. So now C2, okay, I think it's just going to be M and N. We have to change what we're looking for, the L and M. M and N. The next two columns over. But otherwise, the calculation should be the same. Instead of printing the address, I'm just going to print C1 and C2. may still want that around, so I'm going to bring that to the next line, put a single quote in front of it. It'll turn into a comment. C1, comma, C2. And that should print those two numbers off. Now I'm getting just the column numbers so I can verify. The last one says 19 to 24 is what that should be. Take a quick peek. 8 to 9:15. 19. 21, 22, 23, 24. Doesn't quite look right. So it looks like I need to. I'm probably going to have to subtract 1 off of each one of those for my closing cell values. Subtract 1 off of that. 25 to 30, 25. Each gentleman should be how many blocks big? 5. Should be 5. An hour and 15 minutes. Yeah, it should be 5. So yeah, that'll probably do it. 25 to 29, that's 25, 26 to 28, 29. Okay.
Are there a bunch of things above those two rows in your immediate box?
Are there a bunch of things?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The point 33333 is a little bit troubling.
It's just because the class isn't at 50.
Is that what it is? We got a class ending at 50?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to change these to 45. Maybe we won't. Maybe let's see what it does. There's a couple ways we can deal with that. And really, yeah, we heard from the front, that's close enough. And really it is. Because what we're trying to do here is kind of a thumbnail sketch. We've only got 4 blocks wide to show our answer, to be able to divide an hour into. All right. Yes?
So if you were to, is Excel with these macros or with the VBA, if you were to now go in and insert a column, would it automatically adjust your code?
So the question is, what if we insert a column? Now, here's the great thing. If I have a formula that refers to a cell over here, and I insert a column, it updates all the formulas. Right? The question is, will it do that in my VBA code? What do you think?
No.
Not a chance. And so, when we become a little more sophisticated with our code writing, what we could do is, instead of putting this here as column, let's see, minus 8, instead of this one here, plus 19, what does that 19 really mean? That 19 is how far over we're starting. So we could set up a variable. We might use a constant when we do this, but this idea, we could set up a variable, set it equal to 19, and then everywhere we use 19, use that variable. So if we do change it, if we do add a column, we could just change that in one place. Or we could figure out where that starts by having our code look for the cell that says 8 a.m. So we could start off by saying, hey, where is 8 a.m.? And then putting that to a variable and using that variable here instead of the 19. So we can anticipate, we can make our code so that it's robust against those kinds of changes. That's not for today. All right, so now I've got the ability to refer to 2 cells. Let me go ahead and I'll bring these both back up here now. And I've got C1's address and the one from column 2's address. We can print those off, it would show the addresses. But now I'd like to show you how to refer to a multi-cell range. There's several ways I can refer to a multi-cell range. If I have 2 cells, there's a really easy way to do it. And that's what I have. I have a reference to the start cell, and I have a reference to the end cell. And given that, I can now refer to a multiple cell range. Here's how I do it. You've seen the range statement. range, R-A-N-G-E. And then if I give it one argument, A7, it will just refer to that cell. But if I give it 2 cell references, active cell, that's a reference to a particular cell. And active cell dot offset 3, 0. Okay, here's a range method. Starts with an open parenthesis, ends with another closing parenthesis. In here, I have 2 arguments. I've highlighted one of them. Active cell. It's not active cell dot address. It's not active cell dot value. It's the cell itself. I'm referring to the cell. Reference to one cell here, reference to a different cell here. This will return a range that is defined by one corner to the other corner. So what's my active cell right now? Active cell right now, let's put it over here in like J1. So there's my active cell. I'm offsetting 3. 1, 2, 3. So this should give me the cell J, the range J1 to J4. So this is another version of the range method. It allows us to put references to 2 cells, and it will figure out what is the full range between those 2 cells. So here's what I'm going to do. In my debug.print, instead of, I'm going to get rid of the address on both of these. That will turn these both into just cell references. I can't print just the cell reference. Probably default to the value. But now, without those addresses on there, I'm ready to use these 2 as arguments to my range method. So I'm going to print, I'm going to wrap this all inside the range method. So I will come here and say range. Close it there and say dot address. Now when this runs, it should print for me the address of that range that I'm trying to modify for that particular cell, for that particular row. Highlight one of those arguments so you can see a little bit better. So it starts here, range. We have reference to one cell. It's whatever the active row is from the first column that we calculated, whatever the active row is for the second column that we calculated, and that should print the address. The last one is S55 to W55. The row is 55. It's supposed to go from S to W, and that looks like that's what it's supposed to do.
Can you show that correctly?
And this is, I know this is really tough to follow just by typing in. Let me highlight that part. That's the second argument of the range method. Folks, we are so close to having this do something kind of interesting.
I'm so far away from understanding.
What's that? What did you say? You're so far from understanding it?
Yeah, if we're close to doing something interesting, I'm still far away
From grasping.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Let's get doing something interesting, and then let's go back and help fill in the places where we're not quite following.
Okay.
So instead of printing this, I want to change the background color of that cell. And so instead of its address, I'll use a different property. To get to the background color of a cell, I have to go to the interior of the range. So instead of .address, it's .interior, and then .color. Let's do color index. Color index, like 53 colors you can set with the color index property. There's 16 million you can set with the color property. So color index is a little simpler.
Interior.
What's that?
T. You forgot T.
You said
Interior.
Oh, I-N-T-E-R. Thank you.
Is the 3 just says color?
3 apparently means red. Try 4 to give you a different color. you really want to have some fun, use color and put a number between 0 and 16 million and just see what it comes out as.
So, if you just did color, does it accept hex codes?
Question is, if we want to use color, could we somehow compose it up with an amount of red, blue, and green to be able to specify that? So, color number 3 is probably darn near black. Not color index, but color number 3. So, color number 255 is red. You know, some of these you just learned. Color 174,000 is green. I'm just kidding. I don't know what it is. But it turns out you can. There's a function that you can run called RGB that will allow you to specify amount of red between 0 and 255. So you want something that's gray, kind of medium gray. 200, 200, 200. And that will give you the number that means that color.
What type of number? Because there's a lot of online.
It's an integer. So there's gray. I want to get all the red out of that. I don't know what it looks like, but it will look kind of blue. So yeah, you don't get to use the hex numbers you're used to from HTML, but you've got between 0 and 255 to kind of compose whatever color I guess. I kind of like 100, 0, 0. Should be kind of a dark red. 180. Okay, in terms of covering anything new today, I'm not going to do it. So I mean, anything beyond this. So let's go back and fill in the blanks. Where are we? What part are we kind of getting lost at? Is it the idea of the variable? We'll cover that in detail next time we get together. Yep.
How many different colors was the color index?
Color index, I think it's like 53. One day I thought, hey, I've got way more than 1 million cells. I'd like to put all the colors. Since there's more than 16 million cells on this workbook, I'm going to make them all a different color. I wrote a program to do that. It ran for a little while and said, that's too many colors. It really did give me an error like, sorry, too many colors in the world. So don't go crazy. Okay, so there's a few who are looking at this going, how are we doing? So we just kind of walk through this and talk about each line, and if you have a question. All right, so sub and sub. This is what defines the set that I'm running together, set of statements I'm running together. Starts with sub, ends with end sub. Make schedule just a name. It has to be some name that groups these statements into a sub procedure. This next line here, dim C1, creates a variable. Dim is short for dimension. We'll talk about it on Wednesday. But I have now 2 variables. You can think of them today. Think of them as 2 buckets. One labeled C1, one labeled C2. Here we're selecting range F2 so that we start at the top, and then we go into a loop. Let's think about the loop before we look at the details. We're going to loop until the active cell value is blank. Is the active cell value blank the first time we hit this? No, it's what's in F2. I think it's like the catalog number. Yeah, so every course has to have a catalog number, so we feel pretty comfortable about using that as the kind of the guiding column. Inside this loop, we are going to, from the active cell, we're going to offset 1 row and 0 columns. We're going down 1 row. Up to right here, we're only referring to that cell. And then we're calling the method select. We're telling that cell that's down 1 cell below the one that's active, we're telling that cell to make itself active. We're calling the select method of that cell, telling it to make itself active. That makes that the active cell. Do events. Hey, are we trying to get out of this? Loop back up to the top. We can check the active cell. Is it blank? No. And it just keeps moving down until it gets to a blank cell. And this then evaluates it true and it lets us out. So here, then, let's look at what's actually happening inside the loop. C1, we are setting the... this is good. I went over this without really explaining. This is called an assignment statement. So when we put an equal sign like this, it means something really different than this equal sign. It's a little unfortunate, but it's part of the basic language. It's just this, it's the kind of overhead that we inherit. This equal sign here is actually checking for equality. It's like making an assertion that this is equal to this. That is either a true statement or the false statement. And until has to have either something that's true or false. And so this is just like saying, this one is equal to this. And it looks at that and says that's true or false. This one is saying something totally different. This one is saying, take whatever value is on the right-hand side of this equal sign and put it in whatever's on the left-hand side. So here on the left-hand side, we have a bucket, C1. We have a variable, C1. And we're saying, figure out what this evaluates to. Because right now, it depends on where the active cell is. We go get those values out of those cells, figure out what number we're talking about, and this is an assignment. In fact, it's legal syntax to put the word let in front of this. That turns it into a sentence. It sounds like the voice of God. Let C1 equal this long expression. And it does. But we got tired of typing let all the time. I mean, do we really need let? And the good folks in Redmond said, you don't really need let. You can get by without it. We can figure it out without it. And so no one ever writes it anymore. But it's legal syntax and it would work if we left it in there. But that turns it into a sentence that's a little bit more readable. So we're saying let C1 take on a new value. What value is it? Whatever the stuff on the right-hand side of the equal sign evaluates. So we're calculating what we want our column 1 to be and our column 2 to be. Is anyone struggling with the details of this formula? So, let's go over it really briefly. Let's come to this inside of this parenthesis and come up with the first thing that we're calculating. So right here we're saying, go pull the value out of a particular cell. Now, when we use the cells method here, we're saying, give us two numbers. Or let us know what row and what column we're talking about. What row are we talking about? We're talking about a particular cell here. What's the row we're talking about? Whatever row the active cell is on. So we're saying, look at the active cell. Active cell, what row are you on? And the active cell comes back, I'm on row 7. Okay, that's a 7 here. And so this cells method says, row 7, column K. So we look over here, we find row 7, column K. And that's a 12. It's a 12 because I'm asking for the... Didn't I lose my phone? Who's calling me? It's my mother. I hope she's not in a car accident. Probably has a question about Excel. Every time I press Control, it asks my workbook closes and it doesn't save. What have you done? So, cells is saying, so we've identified the cell, row and column, and now we're not asking for the address of that cell, we're not asking for the background color of that cell, the font of that cell, we're asking for the value of that cell. And so this part right here evaluates to what? If active cell is on row 7. It evaluates to 12. We're asking for we're talking about that cell, we refer to that cell, and we're asking for the value of it. So that gives us 12. Now, all the rest of this math up to here is just, we subtract 8, multiply it by 4 plus 19, because 12 minus 8 gets us down to where we're starting. It's just the math that it takes to get us to refer to, when it's 12, to get us to refer to that block right here. And so, rather than go over that in the next 2 minutes, again, that's what that does. We're then adding on another similar calculation. We're now looking at the minutes, and we're trying to figure out, based on the minutes, how many blocks do we have to shift over. So the first part figures out how many hours, get us to the right cell for hours. And this next one says we got to shift over a couple more for the minutes for the starting time. Something similar for the closing time. So that gives us the 2 columns. We then say, all right, we want a range that starts in this column and ends in this column on the row with the active row. The way we do that is range, and then we give it 2 cell references. First cell starts on the active row and in column 1. The column that's marked by C1 ends in the cell that's on the active row and ends in C2. So right up to here, this refers to a multi-cell range that starts in the column C1, ends in the column C2, and is on the row that has the active cell. From there, we want to modify something about it. So we have another assignment statement. We are saying that the interior, it has a property called interior, and the interior has a color. It also has a pattern. It has, that's the only two I know that it has. It probably has more. So it has a color, it has a pattern color. There's a color, a pattern color, and a pattern, at least three. And we are setting the color property of the interior to some particular number. In this case, it's kind of a dark red. And that then is, we look at that row, we figure out based on the start and begin time and end time, where do we want this thing to refer to? We color the background of those cells, we offset one row, we look at it again, and we move on. Questions? Okay, folks. This is it. That's how it's going. We're going to start the next chapter, whatever the book says, next time we get together. Thanks for coming. Homework due next time. When is it due? Yeah, it's due after class. I encourage you to do it before class. You get more out of class if you struggle with it a little bit before. But it'll be pretty easy after class. In fact, it'll be pretty easy after we've just done this today. So give it a shot. Oh, so why the negative 1? The answer is the closing cell, because what we're really doing is we're calculating kind of the beginning of where this cell begins. And so without that negative 1 on there, when we're calculating the closing cell, it's 1 off. So subtracting 1 just tells it that's where we are.
Maybe you want to stop recording?
I just don't care.